Everybody, welcome back to Open Spaces. We're glad you're journeying with us. Today, we are actually diving into a little talk on parenting. And we are not the experts in parenting, but we do have our experience. And as we started recording this episode, we realized that it might be helpful for a parent of someone struggling with same-sex attraction just to hear a little bit deeper dive on my story and what I was thinking as a kid growing up with same-sex attraction and what might have been helpful for my parents to know, or just kind of having that dialogue. So Jourdan kind of interviews me on that, and we do a little bit deeper dive on that. So you'll learn hopefully something in this about parenting the best that we can with our own experience. So welcome back to Open Spaces.
Okay, so welcome back. We're talking about parenting today.
Hey. Yep.
We are going to, now we understand that we are not the experts on parenting someone with same-sex attraction or any kind of sexuality issue. Our kids are young. We haven't really
just a reminder,
dove into
kids
that.
are 11, 9, and 5 right now. And so that's our...
Yes, so we're getting some parenting experience,
but we're also asking all of our friends,
right?
How should we parent our kids?
Totally. So I think what we felt would be helpful for today's episode is to talk about parenting. Well, to really just talk about your childhood. Help parents who are walking through this with their kid to understand an example, a person's experience. And hopefully that can help them, even with some questions they might want to ask their own child, or how to walk with them as they're struggling or questioning, or whatever their case may be.
I think it's important that you said my experience, because what we are learning is every situation is very unique. Yes. And everybody has, their story is all different. And so there is no cookie cutter answer to a parent wondering, how do you parent a child with same-sex attraction? Like, that's not a black and white topic. Right. So, we just want to offer our experience, and then hopefully the parent listening or the kid listening, that you would learn something today, and or just relate.
Right.
And
feel seen.
Feel
maybe
seen.
A little more understood.
Yeah. Like, that's all we can do. So that's what we're coming at today. We'll hope it helps.
Yes.
Also, just want to say from the beginning that we're going to be talking about my childhood and my parents, and it's interesting for me to talk about that. My parents passed away 2 years ago. I lost both of them within 7 months. Both very out of the blue for me. It was tragic and very traumatic for me to walk through that. So losing them in such a crazy way, we can get into that later, but I do feel like that even opened the door to do this podcast more of like, okay, like, time is short. Mm-hmm. How are we using our life? We are not promised tomorrow, all those things. But I say all that because my parents are gone, and I had amazing parents, and I want to honor them through everything that we do. I want to honor them. And I think everyone can relate to this, in that you can honor your parents and still maybe wish some things were different. Sure. And so I think that would be literally everybody. But I don't want to negate that, that I wish some things were different. Sure. While at the same time holding that I love my parents, I honor them, they did the best they could.
That's right.
And if they were here today listening to this, I would want them to hear just a huge thank you for me of how much I love them and respect, and was so grateful. They gave everything for me. So,
and just for a little bit of context, they both grew up on the farm in West Texas, and small town lives. For a long time, for a lot of their lives.
It probably is very helpful to know.
Yeah.
Growing up on a farm, and just a very different life growing up, and so they just. So
the point is, their resources were like basically none.
When I can't imagine. We've said that so many times. I can't imagine what it was like.
This situation
for them to encounter this whole thing and to try to parent me in it, man, there was just no way for them to be equipped in it.
Right.
And so, gosh, I don't hold any of that against them. While I still maybe wish some things were different, there's none of that I hold against them, because
Absolutely. They did the best with what they had.
absolutely,
And
yes,
they always, I know this because I knew them for a long time, and I know you, is that you always felt loved by them
absolutely,
and supported.
yeah. There was no one that loved me more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
that's important.
yeah,
Okay, now we
it's a
can jump in.
good foundation for us.
Yeah.
So let's just go back to the start. And you have covered a little bit of this, I think, in episode 2. You gave some context for what it was like to grow up with same-sex attraction and kind of some of your earlier memories. But maybe we could dive a little deeper. When can you remember when you first knew that you were drawn more towards men, when other people might, when you maybe should have been drawn towards women according to what was considered normal?
Yes, I remember one of my friends' dads in third grade. I
Okay.
remember thinking my eye was drawn towards him, and that was interesting to me, because I was starting to like see, oh, like I think he's handsome, and
Yeah.
but in a different way, I felt that. Um, but going back, I think it's important to like kind of maybe paint the picture a little bit about, I don't know, before that,
Yeah.
there had been already in my life, there had been some things that had happened that we've referenced, that there was an instance with my neighbor who was an older boy, and that was something that ended up later realizing that it was a sexual thing that started putting my head around, introduced me to shame, introduced me to hiding, because something happened and I didn't, as a kid, didn't know how to tell anyone.
And how old were you when that
Gosh, I
incident
mean,
happened? Do you remember?
I don't know. I would have been very, very young. Like, earliest memories. I
Yeah.
mean, 5,
Okay.
maybe, I would think.
Yeah.
So
But you felt shame around it
I
even
felt so
then.
much shame, and I didn't tell anyone.
Right.
So then this is where it began for me.
Yeah,
And
the
so
secrecy
the
and
secrecy, and I had this moment. I remember the moment that I went and told my mom, which is years later. We had moved cities.
you told her that that had
We had
happened.
moved from Amarillo to San Antonio, Texas, where we were living. And I remember the night I went down, I remember it like so clearly. I remember laying in my bed and being so overwhelmed with shame, where I was crying and just like, gosh, I just have to get this out.
Yeah.
And as a kid, not having any tools, or like having no idea what I was processing, I walked downstairs. My mom was watching the old TV show Dallas or something. Like, she was watching something, and I sat down on the couch with her and told her, "Hey, this is what happened." And in that moment, it was she. I'm sure that caught her off guard. I don't really remember all of her reaction to it, but then there was a moment of being taken up to my parents' room, and where, because my dad had gone to pick up my brother somewhere, and so before they got home, I think they just wanted to shield my brother from seeing me like
Upset.
crying and
Yeah.
upset. And so we went to my parents' room, and once they got him situated, then my dad came in, and I just remember even in the room hiding. Like, I remember like hiding in a corner,
Wow.
like worried
Yeah.
and fearful, and ending up telling them. And I don't really remember much after that. That moment happened, and it's very clear to me that that happened. And but that was like my first confession of shame, of
Sure.
like, this is something that happened to me. And so then fast forward what I just left off with, when I was talking about, I noticed these attractions.
Uh-huh.
And so we have a little bit of history now
Sure.
of something in my life. Now I notice attractions. And when I told my parents, I think the only thing they really needed or knew to do in that moment was, well, we probably should have you meet with a pastor. So
Yeah.
we were at a church.
Which feels like a loving and helpful thing to do.
Yeah. So I remember going and meeting with a pastor, and I was very young, and it was very awkward.
Did you
And
have much context with that pastor at that
no,
in
I
your
had,
life at that
and
point?
the thing is, I didn't really have any relationship with this
Yeah.
man. And so as a kid sitting down with this guy who I really had no relationship with or like history with, and he asked me to like journal my thoughts. And so that was really the main point of that I remember talking to him about, not much else that I remember. Then going home and then trying to write down my thoughts. But that fizzled very quickly. And that was, um, that was about, that was it. So once that happened, there was never more discussed. Um, it was, we never talked about it again. We never really readdressed.
As a kid, do you remember if you felt like you wanted to, or did you just think like, oh, I guess like I
I,
don't want to
I,
talk about this anymore?
I didn't have, I would say I was in the middle. I
Okay.
was kind of like, I wasn't thinking, I wish we were talking about it. And I wasn't thinking,
I don't want to.
yeah, I don't want to. Like, it was like, yeah, I journaled, that kind of like fizzled. And then,
Did you think like, oh, maybe this has fixed me? Maybe I'm
no,
better
like
now.
I didn't even have that. It was
Okay.
just more like, I'm just moving.
Yeah, just doing
You're
life
just
and
doing
going
life.
through the next thing.
There was nothing more than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So maybe talk about from that point, like kind of moving into adolescence and
Yeah.
getting becoming middle school kind of years, and when you've gone through puberty and things are shifting. So
Yeah.
talk about that shift when it really started to sink in, like this is where my mind goes.
Yeah. What's interesting, I do have like some memories of being attracted to girls, like in middle school,
Okay.
like, and which kind of felt normal to me and
Yeah.
like, kind of like, okay, like, so there is that in the equation.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. And then,
And you had some like middle school
yeah,
girlfriends
like
and
crushes and
yeah.
that kind of stuff and just the normal middle school boy things. But then, getting into high school, it was that's what kind of shifted everything.
Okay.
So my sophomore year in high school is when I kind of entered into the secret relationship with somebody, another guy at my school. And as I did that, it was interesting because yeah, like that started taking me down a whole different path and started training my mind to go down like this feels good, this is what I want, this is training all of my desires towards a male like that. So it just kind of I enjoyed the companionship. It was a relationship,
Yeah.
so we just did that, but it was in secret and it was throughout high school.
And why, I mean, we could all assume why, but like talk about why you didn't tell anybody.
Again, it's so interesting because there was never like an option to tell someone.
What do you mean by that?
No one asked, no one, there was no one in my life that I was talking to about deep things.
Okay.
So it was
That
just,
just wasn't a practice at all.
it was not a practice at all.
Yeah.
Like that was not something I was trained in or talk about my feelings or thoughts. So him and I it was just so secretive. And because, I mean, it wasn't even a conscious decision. It's just like, this is so on the DL. This is like so quiet and on the side. We're not going to talk about it.
Did you feel like, were you kind of resolved, like, this is who I am? Like, or were you thinking, did you feel bad about it? Or were there any like negative feelings towards that relationship? Like, I shouldn't do this, or how, like, can you talk about that kind of
Not as
stuff?
much. No, like I was just kind of enjoying it.
So
It's
you
kind of like
weren't worried about, were you
not, not,
ever worried about somebody finding out?
um, probably. I was probably like nervous about somebody finding out.
Did you think at that point, did you think I'm gay? Maybe I guess I'm gay now or
No,
okay.
I wasn't even thinking that.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
There was
It was
no,
just sort of
there was
like,
no wording around it.
yeah.
I was just moving through life and like, oh, this is like my relationship, but it's quiet. And I do remember there was like I mean, and it was not like, it was not a healthy thing, obviously.
Right.
And so like when you're not in a healthy relationship in high school and boy or girl, and you're trying to do it alone, that's really hard.
Totally.
So had ups and downs. I had moments of like, heartbreak and things that I was not talking about.
But it doesn't sound like you were aware that you were missing out on talking about it.
No.
Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I knew no one in life that was talking about anything like that.
So
like,
it wasn't like you were thinking, oh, if only I could talk to someone about this. Like, that wasn't even in your mind.
No. And, you know, where we would say now, like, I mean, even then, the pastor I had met with going back, like we didn't have a relationship with him. I didn't really, but even now in high school, like we kind of do the church thing, kind of show up to church, but it was not like we were connected to. I wasn't connected to like people at church or a youth pastor or anything like that. So like there was not even that in my life.
Yeah.
And
you really didn't have the conviction of the Holy Spirit at this point in your
no,
life.
oh, yeah, that came later.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what was a catalyst for all of where we are today.
Did you ever in high school feel like I'm different? I'm different than the other guys. Like,
yeah.
Did that ever happen?
It did, because I was like, I got into show choir. That was like what I really wanted to do. I got into our show choir, and it was a great show choir. And my freshman year.
Tell the people what a show choir is.
A show choir is
Some
when
might
you
not know.
sing and you dance and you do like
to show tunes,
Broadway
right?
numbers.
Yes, okay.
And it was very elite.
Yes, well, you were award winning.
Yeah, award winning.
You were the choreographer.
Well, my freshman year, I was in it. I loved it. I was like loving the singing, dancing thing, and moving away from not even thinking about sports because I never played sports.
But also, it should be noted your brother did, and
Yeah.
so your brother was very athletic and he was playing sports. So there's like a dichotomy there within your family.
Yeah.
Which is important just to understand the dynamics.
Yeah. And
So, but then these are your interests.
these are my interests, and. But I will say I was encouraged by my parents completely in that interest. Like my parents were very supportive of me in that. And even it was really my granddad, my grandpa was like the greatest, and he was one of the closest men I was ever close to. And he's the one who even took me to the show choir audition.
That's awesome.
And was like, you're going to do this. And
that's really cool.
I mean, we're talking, he worked at a trucking company and had been a truck driver most of his life, and small town, West Texas again. And so this man, I even think about that and I'm like, okay, so this older man in my life did not shame me, believed in me. And I look back and go, that's why I was drawn to him.
Yeah.
Because he was like encouraging my giftings of singing and dancing. And I can only imagine that was very weird for him.
But you never felt that.
But I never felt weird. And him encouraging my giftings ultimately did not change my sexuality.
Right.
He was just encouraging my giftings.
So that's an interesting thing. So that was going to be a question, like, do you think for parents everywhere, do you feel like if your parents or anybody would have like kind of pushed you away from that world, that would have changed anything inside of you that was going on?
I can't even imagine if they had tried to stop that because they were so supportive.
Yeah.
But I would have had a lot of hurt if they would have said, don't do this.
Yeah.
I would not have understood why.
Yeah.
I would have been like, but this is what I'm passionate about.
Right.
Is like doing this, singing, dancing in choir. And I don't know.
So in your experience,
in my experience,
your sexuality isn't necessarily determined by your activities.
That's correct. That's our experience.
Maybe that will be a good note for somebody out there.
Yes. Not to be afraid of the activities that are not masculine.
Yeah.
And
And
I
the
think because we're,
passions that are inside of
yeah,
you.
like we've talked about, like even redefining masculinity and like kind of what that really looks like, where we, it's not necessarily like the alpha male and like sports and hunting,
Totally.
fishing that we joke around a lot about. But yeah, like it's,
Those are social norms that are easy to kind of
just
fall
lumped.
into.
Yeah.
So that was really cool that your parents both supported you. They would come to your performances.
Oh yeah.
They were there for you in that world and
Yeah, and I
seeing you
was
shine.
choreographing, and I did that my sophomore, junior, and senior year. I choreographed a show choir. I got paid great money to do that. And yes, we went and won.
Why don't you brag on it a little bit?
I don't want to. I've got my medals
So
somewhere in our basement.
that's right. So that's really amazing. So even though you have this whole like kind of struggle going on inside of you, they're still like encouraging you to be yourself and
Yeah,
um, to to do the things that make you come alive.
yeah. Let's also talk about. I do wonder that we never discussed it, but I really do wonder, and it would be hard for me to believe otherwise, that my parents did not at least assume
Yeah, or
this
suspect.
or suspect this relationship that I had
Yeah.
with this other guy, other, same age. He was a year older, but it would be hard for me to believe that they didn't wonder that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we just never talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important note, I think.
Yeah.
Like that was in
Do
the
you think
equation.
that you would have felt weird if somebody would have brought it up to you?
Um,
Or if you would
I
have.
was a teenager, so I probably would have been defensive, and I probably would have, yeah, I probably would have been short, defensive, not known what to
Yeah.
say. But this is something that I feel like, let's just take a gamble here and see if a parent is listening and wondering. I, let me say this. This is what we would do, I
Mm-hmm.
guess now, like with my experience. If let's put me in the role of dad in this scenario, and I'm suspecting something about my son, and he is doing show choir, and I'm kind of like wonder, I'm
You
wondering,
see a
I'm
lot of
seeing it.
time spent with this other person, like guy, and
What would I do now is the question. And I don't know because we haven't experienced that. I can only assume. And what I would hope I would do would be is to press into him and to ask questions that would maybe they would be, pushing and poking on it, but like to actually sit with him and
mm-hmm.
say, hey, I've noticed y'all are spending a lot of time together. Like, is that just a normal relationship, or is there anything more there?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, how's it feeling?
Yeah,
And try to ask some questions that might be
just open
kind
the
of
door for communication.
to where my son would go, I think my dad might know.
Yeah,
Because it was like, yeah, never on the radar, like talk
yeah,
about it. So even opening the door where, oh, my dad might suspect something and know something is important, would have probably led me into, oh, I want to talk to him.
mm.
I mean, even if I didn't want to talk to him about it and I shut him down, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, I think
There's an open door there if I
there's an
ever want
open
to take it.
door. Yeah, there's something being suspected. So when the heartbreak comes, or this thing ends, maybe I don't have to just live in secrecy
Mm.
and deal with it on my own.
Yeah,
That's what I would hope that I would do, and that's, we haven't had to walk that.
yeah,
So, but yeah, through my experience, it was just we never discussed it.
yeah,
But then I went to college,
yeah.
and that was a whole nother
Yeah, talk about that because
thing.
you've mentioned how everything that was another shift for you
Yeah,
getting into college.
going to college. So I had all this choir background. I get a vocal scholarship to go to college, and so when I arrived, I was determined to try to fit into I had some heartbreak in the silence and the secrecy of high school. That relationship had ended. I had had a kind of a wild senior year of just experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to college, I was like, I'm going to rewrite my story. And I think a lot of people probably think that going to college, you're kind of
Sure.
like, it's my time to become an adult. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
rewrite, like I can be who I want to be. And who I was trying to act like I was in that moment was the definition of a male that we would, that culture would define as
Mm-hmm.
like, this is masculinity. So I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone that I'm doing choir because I went on a vocal scholarship. So I did not even tell my roommate. And I went potluck, so I just get put with this guy, and he's very much the man's man.
Mm-hmm.
And I step in and don't even ever tell him that I'm there on a vocal scholarship.
And why did you not tell him?
I did not want to be in the bucket of um, the gay kid with the choir and the show choir background.
So
I
now
thought
you're
now I'm starting.
realizing that it would bother you if
Yeah,
people thought
now
of you
this
that
is a
way.
turning point of like, now this might bother me if people here at this. I went to Texas Tech, and so it's like a bunch of country boys, like interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I went there, but it was the closest thing to like my family in West Texas. But now it's like all these guys that back then it was very much like all
Kind of
country
like your
boys, good old
macho,
boys.
yeah, good old boy
Yeah,
mentality.
frat guys that I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna fit in.
Okay, so
So
you wanted to fit
I
in.
wanted to fit in. I tried to pledge a fraternity.
I
I tried.
tried.
I tried. I got all the way to Hell Week, and then I was like, I just can't do this. Like, I bailed on Hell Week, which is the last week of your pledgeship. But I did not do that. But throughout that whole time, I was so much in like I just was in turmoil over who I was. Like that's when it began, my freshman year of college, of like, gosh, I don't like this, but I'm trying to be someone different. I'm going out and drinking all the time and getting drunk. And this is the beginning of me trying to soothe the problem that is now rising up more. And the problem is, it's like now I'm starting to feel this weirdness of like something inside of me that's different. I'm not fitting in with anyone. It was a very sad existence.
Yeah.
And when I look back at my freshman year, I would go to like, I did not even want to go to the football games, but I would go to the football games and sit alone. And so I'd go and I would sit alone trying to meet people, trying to meet a friend and looking for anyone. And it was just like, I look back and I'm like, gosh, you were pathetic. You were so sad. But I didn't know any different. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like left alone to kind of like, and
Doing
it
your
really helped me
best.
grow up. A lot of the reasons that I reach out to the person that I see that is alone is because of those days.
Yeah.
Nothing is wasted. So
Right,
it
that's so
wasn't,
true.
it was not a bad thing that
Yeah.
happened. It was a hard thing. And that was kind of my college career of walking through all that.
When did you have anyone in that season of time? Because you got saved in college, and I want you to talk about that and how that even played into the way you were feeling about your double life and trying to figure out who you were. But was there any person or, trusted person that you, in your life at that point, or anyone that you would even consider, like, maybe if I started talking about this, did you even consider that in college?
I did not.
Okay.
Never considered it. And here's what's crazy. Even the guys that I started acting out with in college, because that began, I started acting out
Yeah.
in college with guys. And even in those relationships, we never discussed like what this was.
Uh-huh.
It was all sexual. It was
all secret.
Secret. It was hidden. It was, that was all of college. Just a lot of secrecy.
Did you have any friends that were openly gay in that season?
No. There's one guy that like I remember that I was wondering, and then it just,
So the norm around you was a heterosexual norm, and for context, this is the late 90s, early 2000s in West Texas,
Yeah.
in a school that consists largely of people that are, well, like your kind of your stereotypical things.
Yeah.
And obviously it's more than that, but that was your experience and exposure at that point of your life.
Yeah.
So that's interesting context for what
Yeah.
you're feeling. So talk about when you did meet the Lord and what that did inside of you and kind of how that shifted your framework for this life you were living.
Yeah. It was my junior year in college that I got invited to this conference and called Passion. And I went, and it was thousands of college students, and I had never seen anything like it. And there were these worship leaders, people singing songs about the Lord on stage, and watching them and being in the room, like there was just such a clear presence of the Lord in the room. And I didn't even know how to put that in words back then, but I was just, everything was, the space of that room was just holy. And so when you're in it and you're in a holy space like that, where everyone is seeking God together and there's thousands of people, the Lord comes where he's desired, and he was there.
Yeah.
And it was, I hear the gospel, and I've grown up around this my whole life, but I hear the story of Jesus coming for me, and more than just this, like, religion kind of thing on Sundays, it became, oh, Jesus is like, I can have a relationship with him. He came for me. He is the way to God. He's made a way for me to know God. And it's just, now it's a relationship, and I can talk to him. I can pray. Now I know what prayer is. Now I know what it looks like to walk with him. Like, I'm learning this, like it's all like happening. But I remember in that moment, I'm still promising the Lord, like, okay, I will never act out in, with another guy, because I know that's bad. And like in my mind, I'm just like, I know that this is bad. I know that it's not okay to be gay. And like, that's what I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
Very unhealthy again, because it's like, there's no one telling me that. It's just my self-talk and all my empty false promises to the Lord.
Yeah.
But it's all I knew. And it was a pure, honest place for me of trying to talk to him. And that was my experience. So like but watching and being in that moment, it truly did shift everything moving forward in life, because it was like, now, it's I've said this before, but my desires did not change. It was my allegiance to the Lord that changed, because now I'm like, oh, I want to live for him. There is a purpose of this life. It's not just to get through the day and hopefully not act out or act out, but like not having a plan in life, or seeing life that the Lord has me on this earth for a reason. And there's value in my life, and there's purpose in my life, because he has said that about, that's who he says I am. So that was a whole new shifting of, so now what do we do with that? And what that look like? And so shifted everything in my identity of who I was in Christ.
Yeah.
And it really did start to shape the way that I would eventually walk away from that lifestyle and into our relationship and marriage.
So talk about what was your parents' reaction when this big life change happened in your world?
They were so happy. I mean, I remember I wrote a letter to everybody in my life when I left that conference. I mailed it to everybody. We still have a copy somewhere in this house. And it was, I love it, because it was just like, I want everyone to know this is who Jesus is. And it was amazing. But my parents were so happy. I mean, my mom was one of the greatest prayer warriors.
Yeah.
That woman prayed for me, I mean, all the time.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine, I think she was trying to play it cool.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine what her heart was doing, of like, when that shift happened for me, and she started seeing, now I go back and I'm like I'm in church, and I'm using my gifting now of music and playing piano and singing in church, and got really plugged into that. And so her seeing that, I can only imagine that was like, just like for any of us as parents, like our greatest, the goal of all of it is for our kids to love the Lord and to give their life to him.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that would be probably a really amazing thing, that if my mom was here, if we asked her. I bet that would be something huge.
They also continued to support you in what you were doing, and we're so proud. So when you quit your corporate job to pursue ministry full time and be a worship leader, talk about that too, and how just what you felt from your parents in that season.
Yeah. Well, my dad was worried about money. My dad was
pretty common.
a finance guy. Yeah. I mean, just like I would do, but they, yeah, they were just so like, my dad didn't fully understand. I had graduated college, worked for a company called Accenture as a consultant for a few years before turning 25 and feeling this call of like, I need to quit my job and really pursue ministry. And like, this is all I want to do.
Yeah.
And so in that, it was my dad kind of questioned, how is this going to work financially? As did I.
Sure.
Because I went from making a ton of money to no money in ministry. But they were so happy, so supportive. I mean, I did my first CD. My entire family was the greatest support to me. They were all there and championing me like so much. I mean, my family believed in my gifting of music more than anyone. I mean, they just were the most supportive.
Yes.
More than anyone.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So again, they're there wanting to see you shine, wanting to see you soar, believing in who you were made to be. So this is kind of when I enter the picture in your life, when you were right before you started doing ministry full time, a few years before that. And meeting your parents, meeting your family, it was very clear how proud they were of you. And even, you had also, it should be mentioned, like you had this eye for design and beauty. And so your apartment was always like impeccably designed and everything matched. And
Thank you.
Your spaces, well, yeah, it's clear. Your spaces were very beautiful and warm and inviting. And I think that was another thing that your parents encouraged.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And I remember you even talking about like rearranging your room all the time as a kid. And and so I think, I saw that from the beginning of knowing your parents is this support for everything that Jeff Johnson was. And so then talk about the shift after. So I'm the first person you really tell about your same-sex attraction. And that was very, very hard for you to do. I mean, we've talked about this before on the podcast. You didn't think you would ever tell anyone. So finally you tell me, and then starts to kind of open the door. Now talk about talking to your parents in that season.
Yeah. So then the details are a little blurry, but I will say the main points is that I did reach out to my parents after we started working through it together.
Yeah.
And the main reason was because I had just quit my job. I was in ministry. I didn't have money, and there was I needed help. And then I needed counseling in a way that was different than just like showing up, to a weekly thing. I needed to go I was looking for any resource of like where could I go and meet with somebody and talk to somebody that understands this. And very hard to find. Yeah. Very hard to find. There was a guy named Joe Dallas that was doing counseling, like intensives, that had been his story. And he had come out of that life. So he was doing counseling intensives, and it was in California, and I found it somehow. And I was like, I need to do this, but it's a lot of money. Yeah. And so ended up calling my parents and saying, hey, I need to ask for something, and let me explain why. And said, this has continued to be my battle in life, and I would love to go out and spend do an intensive with him, but it's going to be a lot of money. And I told him that, and of course they were supportive in giving me the money and saying like, whatever you need. And they found a way to do that for me, which I was really grateful. And we had a little conversation as a family where it wasn't in person, but even telling my brother and that that was the first time that we had addressed it,
Mm-hmm.
like on the phone as a family talking about it. It was very kind of brief, and that was kind of it. So
Did they have a lot of questions, or do you remember?
no, there was not a lot of
Yeah.
questions at all.
How did you feel kind of coming out of that conversation?
Um, I probably, being fully honest, I wish that there would have been more follow-up questions. Um, but I also, in our family, we also didn't, we didn't dive into deep things a lot. Like
Yeah.
that wasn't really the family that we
It
were.
wasn't
We
your
didn't,
family culture.
no, we didn't really talk about a lot of deep things altogether. So it's kind of what I would expect.
Yeah.
And I didn't know differently. And I was like, well, that's what happens. I wish that we would have talked more about it, especially since I was the one bringing it up. Once I had brought it to the light, I think the most helpful thing would have been to be like somebody following up and talking with me more about it. And I will say, I think this is probably, I've read a lot of research and done a lot of reading on all of this. And a lot of times it's the father-son relationship that, I was way closer to my mom,
Yeah.
like all through life. I related to her more. She was just everything to me. And my dad and I did not have the relationship that I would have hoped for.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect anything differently, but I wanted something different.
Sure.
I wanted him to, more than my mom, I would have loved my dad reaching out, but we also just hadn't built that relationship. So that would have been hard. But I say to any dad listening that your son has, if he's opened the door for you in this, I would tell you step through it, move towards him, ask the questions. Especially if your son opens the door and is saying that he brings it to you, you just have every right to be asking questions and some of the questions that would have helped maybe if I'm looking back now would have been like, how does it play out for you? How does that feel for you? Normal day to day.
Yeah.
How does that look for you going through a normal day? Are you struggling? Are you like tempted by guys in different places or like, is it just help me understand what that looks like?
Just questions that would have helped him
Even as a
learn.
heterosexual, fully heterosexual, never having known anything about this, even to ask the questions, just the curiosity that we've talked about a lot. Like, what is it like for you? How does it feel for you to like live that way? And honestly, just in the ways of pushing me towards the Lord would have been awesome too. Of just like, maybe I can't relate to that as a dad. My dad would have said like, I can't relate to that, but been vulnerable about something in his life, that would have shifted so much. Like if he would have said, but I do, man, this is my son, you have that and I have this, and it's been a battle for me. And opening that door of like especially if your son has opened such a vulnerable place in his life, then for the dad to open a vulnerable place in your life to keep it going. So it's not all like one-sided, all focused on
Normalizing struggle of any
and
kind.
not isolating the kid to be like, oh, well, your thing is, I guess it's the only thing, we all know that everyone has something.
Sure.
So I think that would have really helped me in the process of some vulnerability once I shared to receive some vulnerability back.
Yeah.
And that would have been really helpful
Kind
to
of
me.
unlocked something.
Yeah.
Talk about some men that did begin to help push you towards the Lord, and like, specifically what that looks like. What was helpful when you did start sharing with people, and specifically from a male perspective, like men that actually were like would listen and be able to help you in any way when you did become vulnerable with other people.
I guess the first one was Peter, our counselor. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I'm trying to remember back, but I think we were in counseling and sitting with him. I always felt he always made me feel like loved and cared for, even as a counselor, and he pushed me towards the Lord and everything he said, and I appreciated that. Like, I really loved his listening ear. He met me with tears. I remember many times that he was very emotionally present with me.
Yeah.
And that was what I really wanted and desired, was that emotional connection, and that was awesome.
Being able to sit with you in your pain
Yeah.
and acknowledge it and empathize.
Yeah. And me telling him, like, I don't want this in my life,
Yeah.
but he didn't try to change me. He was just listening and loving and pushed me towards scripture and the Lord, and fostered that relationship more than anything. And then it became very important with my friendships with, the first one was our guitar player, Wes. And he was, him asking every possible question and trying to relate and listening, never judging me in it. That was like a huge, crazy thing that was awesome. I just felt very comfortable to share everything with him and talk about all the weird parts of my head and what they were doing. That's where I really started to learn vulnerability, is like, oh, I can tell him everything. And he actually shared a lot back. That didn't necessarily happen until he was the first guy that's how that worked. I share something, you share something back. Oh my gosh, now we're like really connected and close, but it's not sexual.
Yeah.
And that was what I needed. I needed the closeness to another male that wasn't sexual, that involved vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I hadn't known that before. So that was very new to me. I had either the loving kindness of a family without the kind of opening up on the of receiving, or the opening up to be vulnerable to me.
Yeah.
And then I had all these sexual encounters that had no real vulnerability even in that, of like never going deep, just more fulfilling a desire. But now these friendships started becoming healthy, and it was a learning process for me of how you are healthy in a relationship, and moving towards each other, but not sexualizing it.
Right.
But that is hard, I think, for guys. Some guys, I mean, for me, it was like to come out of that and not start sexualizing it, and wonder, oh, if we can get, I think there's another level for us to be closer, and sexualizing that. And I had to work through that, which you walked through that with me, and that was really challenging for you to have to like work through all that with me.
It's so helpful to understand better, and to learn what was healthy, and to learn more about you and just a lot of the depths of it.
Yeah.
So helpful.
Yeah. So then going back to like, now my parents know, now they've, we've had the conversation. We're not really talking about it anymore.
Yeah.
And then you're in the equation, they love you, and they're very happy that we're, I'm sure they were confused. I'm sure they were like, 10 years on and off.
Yeah.
They're like, who is Jourdan to Jeff? I can only imagine the conversations of like, what's happening. And, but it was very siloed. Like we weren't like all talking about it together.
Yeah. But from my perspective, I felt very loved and accepted, and even when I knew that they knew, and we're not all talking about it, but I knew that we're all aware of the main issues.
Yeah.
I felt like I really just felt their support and love, and that was very just a theme to the end with them, and I felt like there was so much gratitude for me and your family, and I felt very welcomed in completely, and so I think even in the last few years, when you and I started sharing our story with more people, more of our friends and people that we would learn about or get introduced to that had maybe similar stories or struggles, and we would kind of have a little bit more open conversations with your mom, and she didn't ask a lot of questions, but I always knew that she was so so grateful
Yeah.
for what the Lord was doing in our lives and what he'd done in our story,
For sure.
and how he was using us and how he's beginning to use us and use our story.
Yeah. The notes that my mom wrote, she would imply things
Yeah.
of how the Lord was doing something miraculous.
Yeah.
And even, gosh, a few weeks before she died, when she was here sitting in our living room, we were talking about doing this podcast and releasing it. And she didn't say anything, but she was just sitting there listening and nodding along. And so we became more normal to normalize it, even talking around her about it.
Yeah.
But that was all quite a journey. And
But again, I think the way that I saw it is that even if there weren't a lot of words, the support was there.
Yeah.
And
I had never doubted.
Yeah, it was very much felt.
Yeah.
And so, before we close, I wonder if there's anything else that you would want to say in regards to your parents, in regards to parenting, just from your perspective and your experience.
Yeah. The thing I would say is, I think parenting is so much out of our hands. The only thing that we can do for our kids is to pray. And I'm really confident that my parents prayed a lot for me. And they may not have had words to put around this because they didn't have any training in it. But I know that they prayed a ton for me. And I know my mom, it's a parent's love and prayers that have changed me. I think I'm standing on this other side of receiving God's grace and kindness and this new life that I have been given because of following the Lord, because of those prayers that my parents prayed. Though I desired conversations, and though I desired things to probably be different in the way that we talked about it, I'm just grateful that I knew I stand here today knowing that they prayed, and that's what changed things.
Yeah.
God heard. And I'm a recipient of those prayers now, and that's all you could really want as a kid, is to look back and go, I know my parents, they love the Lord, and they ask on my behalf for things. And so I don't consider it that lost today, that the miraculous we're standing in is a lot of my parents begging God for things. And I would just say that to any parents listening, you're not going to get it right all the time. We will not get it right. We know that. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. We're going to juggle. Do we talk about it? We'll probably lean on the side of talking about it too much.
Sure.
I mean, we're already doing that. Like, we have,
and that's the way that we'll
get into that in another episode where our kids are like,
traumatize our kids.
Can we not talk about it? Like, and so we'll get it wrong in certain ways, but I think at the end of all of it, we are begging the Lord for our kids to love him, to walk with him, to know him, and trusting that even when we get it wrong, he is still sovereign and in control of their life, and things will all turn out how he intended. And so just keep praying.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I think that was a really helpful perspective, just to hear what it was like for Jeff growing up and what his relationships were like. And if you are a parent today of a kid that is struggling through same-sex attraction or questioning sexuality or anything along those lines, just know that you're not alone. And one of the things that I'm taking away just from hearing Jeff's experience and story is that God carries us and he gives what is needed. And so and the prayers are such an effective tool that we have. So please be encouraged. We pray you're encouraged today, that you have what you need. God carries our kids, and we can rest in that. And we really want to keep providing resources specifically for parents. So we'd love to hear from you. If you are a parent of someone that is same-sex attracted, gay, LGBTQ, we would love to hear from you and understand your story more and more. So please stay connected. Sign up for our newsletter on the website, openspacespodcast.com, and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next time on Open Spaces.